Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Well, folks, welcome to a special edition of Business Coaching Secrets. If you follow me, you know I don't really do interviews, but some interviews you need to do, and this is one of them. Keith Cunningham is a total stud. To say that I'm excited to be here with him today would be an understatement. He's regarded as one of the foremost authorities and teachers on business mastery. He's got more than 45 years of business and investing experience. He's taught critical business skills to thousands of top executives, business owners, and entrepreneurs around the world, and he advises the who's who of legit, and I repeat, legit business world. In Keys to the Vault Business School, he's created a curriculum that's designed to accelerate the transition from operator to owner. Basically, how to drive sustainable financial performance and business success. He has a super popular board of directors program where he serves as chairman of the board for businesses in a wide range of industries. Keith's latest book, The Road Less Stupid, which I've personally read 4 or 5 times, and my copy looks like it's been run over by a truck because it's got that many folded pages, post-it notes, and highlighted sections in it. It's about adopting the discipline of thinking time, which enables you to run your business more effectively. Super importantly, help your coaching clients run their businesses more effectively, make more money, and dramatically increase the likelihood of doing what so few manage to do, and that's keep the money versus unnecessarily give it away. He's the author of Keys to the Vault, Lessons from Pros on Raising Money, also Igniting Your Business, and the ultimate blueprint for an insanely successful business. I've read them all, and so should you. His wife, Sandy Cunningham, is a fellow business rock star that's never far from his side and an absolute joy. Well, the best person introduced to legendary Keith Cunningham is Keith Cunningham himself. So without further ado, such an honor to have you here with me today on Business Coaching Secrets. Welcome, Keith. How's it going, buddy?
Thank you, Karl. Thank you. I am very excited and very appreciative of the opportunity to spend the next few minutes talking and sharing ideas and figuring out what needs to happen in order to support people transitioning from operator to owner and learning maybe some additional skills and tools along the way. So thank you for the opportunity, Karl.
You bet, buddy. And again,
and just so your audience knows, I've been following you as well, and I'm very impressed. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to lie. Keith and I had a bit of a private chat here earlier, and he told me that he'd seen something that I had put out, which, by the way, mimicked some of his stuff, which I absolutely learned from him. Just shame, don't worry about that. Learned straight from his mouth to my ears. And he complimented me, and I'm pretty sure I blushed like a little school kid. So anyway, so just to make sure that everybody knows who's the boss of this conversation, it's Keith, well and truly. So Keith, thank you so much. The kudos, I can't begin to tell you what it means, man. I can't begin.
Thank you.
So tell me, so I want to get into it. I'm going to warn you, I got a lot to cover here. So to get into it, the questions, if you were to walk into the average business owner's office, okay, and let's assume that they're doing under 1 million, which is the majority, and you were tasked with making them more profitable immediately, what questions would you start with? And like, what framework or methodology would you use? Could you help me with that?
So I would start with 5 key things. my very first question would be, tell me your priorities.
Yep.
Tell me the things that you think are most important for your business and for your success. Number two, I would say, show me your calendar. And what I would find is that most not only under 1 million, but over 1 million and under 50 million don't have a calendar that they're working off of that's helping them control the allocation of resources for the priorities that they've set. So I've just said this will be a little outtake, Karl. So we'll put it in parentheses. One of the problems that most people have is that they set priorities and then don't manage or control their calendar so that it's congruent and aligned with the priorities that they've set. In other words, it does no good to set priorities unless you're prepared to allocate the resources required to successfully execute on those priorities. So question number one is, tell me your priorities. Question number two, show me your calendar. Question number three would be, show me your dashboard.
Yeah.
In other words, how are you measuring what you're doing? How are you measuring your performance on the priorities that you've set? Whatever they happen to be. What gets measured is what gets done. Period. What gets measured is what gets managed. Period. I own a lot of businesses, not big businesses. They're between 5 and 15 million of revenue, and I recently have been through an exit process on a number of those. But I had lots of businesses simultaneously, and I wasn't operating the business, I was running the business. Those are two different things. And the way I ran the business is I established the metrics in the dashboard, the standards, not goals, but rather standards that we had. I think goals are wishful thinking.
Yeah.
I think goals are a description of Oz. And what's critical is not, can I describe Oz? What's critical is, can I build a yellow brick road to get me from where I am to what I say I want? And so if I don't have a dashboard, or somebody that is a business owner doesn't have a dashboard that's measuring their execution on the critical drivers that allow them to achieve their outcomes, their priorities, then chances are there's a problem. So first three questions. Tell me your priorities. Show me your calendar. And I promise you, their calendar ain't going to have anything on it except work hard. And then question three is, show me your dashboard. Question four, who's on your team? Who's on your team? And are they A players? Or do I have some people that are 3 feet tall that I've thrown the basketball to and I'm asking them to dunk it? Do I have some people on my team that I'm having to beg to do their job? My theory is this: you don't have to beg me for your paycheck. Why in the world am I begging you to do your job? So do we have A players on the team? And if you want to later, we can talk more about A players. But most businesses under 1 million or not don't have A players. They've got B and C players that are they're good people, they may want to do a good job. Their heart may be in the good place. They might be loyal and have been with you for 5 or 10 years, but that doesn't make them A player. So what makes an A player an A player is they make an A on the test.
Yeah.
Period. So those are the first 4 questions. Tell me your priorities, show me your calendar, show me your dashboard, tell me who's on your team, and number 5, show me your financial outcome or your goal for the next 12 months and tell me the 5 most important things that need to be consistently executed to achieve that. Those are the top 5. If I walked into any business, I'd say your profits are a symptom of some other problem. Your revenue or lack of revenue is a symptom of some other problem. So let me get some clarity around what you're trying to do, what your calendar looks like, what the dashboards look like, who's on your team, and what are the 5 most critical things.
Boom. I love it. Can I expand on one of those?
Absolutely.
I love this. You taught me this, but because if you're wondering, right, if you're listening and you're wondering, well, do I have A players? And Keith, tell me if I'm right here. A players love to be measured. There's your acid test. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Think back to high school. Think back to junior high. Think back to college. There was some kid in your class that always made A's. And that kid may have been you. But there's some kid that always made A's. And I can think back to high school and junior high and college, and I know those kids' names. I'm 70 years old, so it's been 50 years. I can still remember those kids. One of them was Mary. Mary, I went to grade school with, junior high school with, high school with. She never made a B. Let me tell you something, Karl. Report card day was her favorite day of the year. Yeah. She would skip to school. She would sing. She was so lively and engaged on report card day. She loved to be measured. I, on the other hand, was not a straight A student. I wound up, doing pretty good and applying myself in college. But look, in junior high and high school, I wasn't a straight A student or even a straight B student. In fact, sometimes I wasn't even a straight C student. And when I was a B and C player, report card day was the worst day of the year for me. Every single one of them was horrible because I knew I was going to get this report card, and then I'd have to go home, and my parents would look at me and say, my dad would look at me and say, "Oh, son, I'm disappointed. You can do better than this." And I go, "Oh, God, he's right." But I hated it. B and C players hate to be measured. A players absolutely love it.
Yeah, I love it. We shared that. I have Cody Church. He went to Harvard, went to school with him. Same thing. He was skipping to school. And then I, on the other hand, not nearly as exciting. Actually, like this one. My dad, one time I brought home my report card. It was one of the lesser ones, let's put it that way. And my dad, I gave it to him, and I thought, I live with my dad. My parents got divorced. I live with my dad. And I thought, oh, my goodness, I'm in trouble. Anyways, I give him my report card. I'm expecting to get, I'm going to my room for a few hours or a couple of days. And he goes, "You're the smartest kid in the whole school." And my dad's a bit of a smart ass, right? I'm like, "Dad," because I know it's coming. What do you mean? And he goes, "You got 50, 50, 50, and 51 in the 4 core subjects." He goes, "You did 1% more than required to get him to leave you alone." And I'm like, "All right, Dad." Yeah. And then he sent me to my room for a couple of days. But anyways, so there you go. Okay, Keith. I love it.
Karl, can I add one more thing right there?
Yes, please.
I think the other significant attribute of A players is they have a high internal emotional need to succeed. I'm going to say it again. A high internal emotional need to succeed. I think with A players, you don't beg. You don't motivate. A players have something inside them that nourishes and fertilizes and ultimately demonstrates this need, internal need, to be successful. And I think one of the mistakes that we make as leaders is that we either beg our employees to do their job or do it the way we want it done or to follow our rules or embrace our culture. We wind up begging instead of inspiring. And I happen to think the role of a leader is to lead and not manage. Certainly there has to be management. But if you have on your team A players who love to be measured, who have a high internal emotional need to succeed, you've won 90% of the race. Yeah. The primary source of all leverage inside of a business, there's multiple sources, but when you think about a business, the primary source of leverage is the people on your team. And if you got pathetic, weak people on your team, you're going to get pathetic, weak results. Yeah. And that's true 100% of the time. Yeah. There are no exceptions to that.
Yeah. No, yes, the Bezoses and the Tony Robbins and whatnot of the world, who I know you're very close to, that's it. He's surrounded himself with winners. Right?
That's right.
So let me ask you, so in your book, The Road Less Stupid, again, read it many times and it's fabulous. Everybody should make sure you read that, guys. You reference the dumb tax. Can you just explain what you mean by that? And why is it important that business coaches and whatnot know?
Great question. So I'm going to answer this question with a question. If you're listening to this right now, write down on your piece of paper that you're taking notes on. I'm hoping you're taking notes. Write down on your piece of paper write down on your piece of paper how much money you would have right now if you could unwind any 3 previous financial decisions. So if you could unwind a previous decision that would involve money, how much money would you have right now had you just not made that prior decision? And most people, Karl, will tell me, well, shoot, Keith, I mean, I'd have 5 times, I'd have 8, I'd have 10, I'd have 40, I'd have 100 times more money if I could just have avoided those 2 or 3 mistakes. Those 2 or 3 mistakes were probably preventable. Yeah. They were based on excessive optimism. They were based on faulty assumptions. They were based on a inability or unwillingness to evaluate the risk. Mm-hmm. But the risks were available to see had anybody thought about it. The optimism was available to think about had you bothered to think about it. The risk that were there were available to see if anybody would have bothered to think about it. Those decisions are called a dumb tax. And I've got dumb tax. I mean, my dumb tax are in the millions, as you know. And my God, if I could just have avoided 1 or 2 really, really stupid things that I've done, I'd have a whole lot more money. So here's the lesson. Here's the takeaway. The key to being financially successful is doing fewer stupid things. If I can just be thoughtful and do fewer stupid things, then I'll wind up being more financially successful. I don't need to do more smart things to make more money. I need to do fewer stupid things. And what kills people over and over again is with their money is generalizations. They're sloppy with their thinking. One of my favorite sayings is generalizations kill clarity.
Mm.
People make pay a dumb tax because they're obsessed with Oz instead of the yellow brick road that gets you from Munchkinville to Oz. To put that in plain English, the business vernacular, most people execute on ideas and not plans, and it's deadly. I'm going to say it again. Most people execute on ideas and not plans. And if we had a solid yellow brick road that got us from where we are, Munchkinville, to what we want, which is Oz, now our odds of success go way up. Yeah, we're going to run into some flying monkeys, and we're going to run into the Wicked Witch of the East, and we're going to have all kinds of issues, but at least we have a yellow brick road that gets us from where we are to where we want to get to. And finally, I think the dumb tax is caused by faulty assumptions. We wind up making stuff up instead of saying, well, wait a minute, what are the facts? What are the assumptions I'm making, and how realistic are those assumptions? And so I think we can make a whole lot better decisions if we would just do a little thinking along the way. And that's really what The Road Less Stupid, my book, is about, is how can we do a better job of being thoughtful? So on a bumper sticker, I'll say this. Business is an intellectual sport. It's not what people want to hear.
Yeah.
People want to hear about, oh, it's my passion, it's my life's purpose. I get all that. Money is an intellectual sport. Warren Buffett, before he goes into a board meeting, does not spend time getting himself jacked up and into state. What he does is tries to calm himself down and be thoughtful. When I look back at the emotional decisions I made around money, the vast majority of them have a dumb tax attached to them. Because I'm using my emotions, my gut, my glands to play a game that's an intellectual sport. Now, what I'm saying is not popular in today's world, but it's the truth.
Yeah. I'm getting you to agree. And one, just again, so for the business coaches listening, would you agree that a good way to help them, again, and I want to make sure they all took this away, you don't need more good ideas. You need to do less stupid stuff, right? Would you agree
Yes.
a set of rules, like you're very successful investor, I know you have a very robust and impressive set of rules that you will never make a decision with without running through, correct? Even 45 years of business experience, hundreds of millions of dollars, and you, I'm going to guess, but you'd abide by those rules, correct?
Absolutely correct. So another way to view that is guardrails.
Yeah.
I have a lane that I can be in. I'm a certain kind of car, certain size car. I can go a certain speed. And I have guardrails and speed bumps set up that protect me from me. I have a worst enemy. His name is Keith. That little sucker wakes up every morning and tries to figure out how to sabotage my life. And so what I'll prove it to you right now. Here, everybody listening to this, just think about this. Every single one of my problems started out as a good idea. Every single one. And yours did too.
Yeah.
I need fewer good ideas. I'm using good in quotes, right? I need to be thoughtful. I'm not lobbying for, let's not try something new or let's not have a good idea. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you're going to have a good idea, then let's be thoughtful about it and make sure that we've examined our assumptions, examined the second order consequences, examined the facts. Can I live with the downside? If this thing doesn't work out, can I live with it? Do I have a way to recover? And some of my dumb taxes were so large and so expensive that literally the recovery process was, ICU in a coma for 2 or 3 years. I mean, you don't want to make those kind of mistakes. So yes, I definitely think that being thoughtful about your ideas, and if it is a good idea, let's examine it and turn it into a yellow brick road called a plan.
Yeah, love it. Okay, speaking of plans, so you've said that the two biggest pieces of leverage for a business are thinking time and measuring. I believe I'm correct on that. So can you expand and let me know if I'm right, but expand on that. Maybe give us a little bit of an overview of your process. Like, for example, what should a small business owner measure that they're probably not, and how should they structure their thinking time?
So measuring is critical. It's critical to sustainable progress. It's critical to improvement. It helps management or the owner or the team member to know with clarity how they're doing and what could be done better. Yeah. The way to think about critical drivers, which is what we want to measure on a dashboard. So the way to think about a critical driver is to ask yourself this question. When I have a bad month financially, what should have happened that didn't happen, or what didn't happen that should have happened? In other words, when I have a bad month financially, either something happened that shouldn't have, or something that should have happened didn't. Let me make a list of 5, that's all, 5 things that cause a bad month financially. And those 5 things can now get metrics around them, and I can create a dashboard that measures my consistency of execution on these 5 things. And that way, when I get to the end of the month, I'm not surprised when I look at my report card called financial statements. That's all financial statements are. They're a report card. I look at the report card and I don't go, oh, God, I just had a bad month financially. I didn't see that coming. Well, of course you could have seen it coming. Had you been measuring the critical drivers that have to get executed in order to create the good outcome that you want. Every business is different. That's the problem. There's no bathrobe in business. There's no one size fits all. So I don't know what, your business or other people's businesses should be measuring, but I do know the first principle that we should be thinking about in order to create that dashboard. If I've got a dashboard that has a standard, not a goal. So I used to be in the car wash business. These were not typical car washes. These are car washes that did, 5, 6, 7 million a year of revenue and 20, 25% profit margins. I mean, they weren't great big businesses, but they were really solid businesses. And we had 5 critical metrics that we had to hit on a daily basis. And every metric had a standard. So maybe it's revenue per car or labor per car or the relationship between labor and revenue. All those were standards. That's examples. And if we hit all 5 of our critical drivers, then the odds were 99% that we were going to have a great month financially. But every one of those critical drivers had a standard, not a goal, a standard. And the people responsible for that standard had to send me a note every day telling me, showing me their performance against the standard. And if they were underperforming against the standard, then they had to tell me why they underperformed and what they were going to do about it. In other words, I'm about to say something critical to leadership. I want my team reporting out and not me checking in. If I got to check in, I'm going to be the mom. That's what moms do. Moms check in. Did you do your homework? Did you pack your lunch? Did you make your bed? Do you have on clean underwear? Did you brush your teeth? Moms are constantly checking in. I want adults. I want people reporting out because they own their job. See, I used to own the job, and then I hired you, and now you own your job. I'm 70 years old. My mom is 96. She's still alive. In the last 60 years, I have never once talked to her and her ask, Keith, did you brush your teeth? She figured out at some point they're my teeth. I'm still her son, but they're my teeth. And if I'm going to keep all my teeth, I need to own my teeth. She can't check in on how my teeth are doing because they're my teeth. It's your job. Your job is to produce certain results that hit our standard. And if you don't hit those results, then you get to tell me, you bring it up that you missed our standard. You tell me that you see that. Here's what went wrong, and here's what you're going to do to fix it. And if you don't know what to do to fix it, raise your hand. I love it when people raise their hand because now it gives me an opportunity to coach and to train. I love people that raise their hand. I want you to make an A. If you make an A, I make a lot of money. That's really, really good. Okay. So that's measuring. Measuring is fundamental to financial performance, to sustainability, to leadership. How in the world can I lead my team and run the company, not operate it, run the business, unless I've told my team, here's what's most important. Here's what we're going to measure. And now if I tell them, here's what we're going to measure, and they're responsible for certain outcomes, guess what they focus on? They focus on the critical drivers, the 5 things that cause us to have a good month financially. And they own their job. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
Love it.
Okay, that's measuring. Do you want a little piece on thinking time, or do you want to follow up on measuring?
Actually, I want to make sure that everybody took something away. I often talk about like the greatest brands in the world, the Ferraris, the Louis Vuitton, the list goes on, Apple and whatnot. They have one thing in common, and that's margin. Like if you ask me why a network marketer will never make any money, the answer is margin. So just when Keith was describing his car wash business, he top line revenue, but that was the way that he expressed it. From what I heard, he was significantly more excited about his 25% margins than he was his top line revenue. The average business owner has got no clue what their margins are. And if it's a superpower of the greatest brands in the world, it's probably a good idea that they start measuring it. So Keith is a measurement freak. So that, and I'm guessing you'd agree with that, Keith, and that was my big takeaway.
I am vigorously nodding my head. You are so right, Karl, and I've seen it too many times where the only metric that a business owner has is how much revenue is and how much it's growing. And at the end of the day, the only reason I want revenue is so that I can control my expenses enough to be able to leave something in my genes called a profit. Yeah. And this isn't a problem for small companies. I have a guy on one of my boards who has a $40 million a year revenue company that's grown like crazy during COVID. I mean, like doubled in size. We call it the miracle of the COVID, right? He's had phenomenal success, and all he keeps showing up to tell me about is how his revenue is doing. And here's the truth. The truth is his revenue has doubled and his profits have stayed the same.
Yep.
Now, wait a minute. It's the only reason. What good does it do for me to deliver twice as much as I was before and still make this? In fact, most people I know, we'll check this out with you, Karl, and your team. Most people I know have had the experience where they've grown their revenue and made less. and that's entirely backwards.
I know. Heart wrenching. And by the way, kind of giggle, but this is dad in the fetal position, right? Like this is not good, right? It's okay when they're profitable. When they go to, from profitable to unprofitable, it gets real ugly real quick, and it's a darn shame. And totally unnecessary. Totally unnecessary. Yeah.
Totally unnecessary. All right, let me tell you about thinking time for a minute.
Yeah, could you go to thinking time? I love this.
So, without telling a long story, but a very, very short version, years ago, 40 years ago, I met probably the smartest man I've ever met in my entire life. And that's even true today. This guy is way out there smart, super rich, super successful. And I happened to be in a meeting with him in which the meeting was interrupted because one of his associates needed an answer on some thorny problem that they had. And I was sitting in the room with this very smart guy when the question was asked. And this very smart man, when he heard the question, opened his little day timer. This is in 1981, 40 years ago, opened his day timer, which is a paper day timer. And he looks at that page, and then he turns the page, and he turns another page, and he's looking at it, and he starts writing something down with his number 2 pencil. And he writes it in his day timer, closes his day timer, and looks at the guy who's interrupted the meeting, and he says, "The next time I'm scheduled to think is between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on Thursday morning. You'll have an answer at 5 a.m." I watched this and I went, holy moly, these guys are operating at a whole different level. 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. is impressive. But scheduling time to think was unheard of. I mean, I just, first time when I heard that, Karl, I wrote down in my Big Chief tablet that I had with me, I said, Keith, schedule some time to think. That seems to be a good idea, right? So the first time I sat down to think, I got my pad and my pencil, and I sat in a chair, and about 2 minutes went by, and I took a nap. I literally fell asleep in my chair. So I tried it again, same result. And so I said, obviously, I don't know how to think. That's the problem. I mean, thinking time is important. I don't know how to do it. So through a very long sequence, I got this very smart man on the phone. It took about a week. I got him on the phone. I said, you don't remember me, but I remember you. And I've tried this thinking time and it doesn't work. What are you doing to cause thinking time to be successful? And he said to me, start with a question. Write down on a piece of paper a question. Then with your pencil, this is before all the computers, but I still do pencils in a journal. Write down a question, close your door, turn off your phone, get rid of any distractions, and sit and start writing. And what you want to do is have a question and a dot, an empty dot on your piece of paper. So as soon as you ask a question, you there's an empty dot. Now you have an answer. First thing you do is put another empty dot on your paper. So your brain thinks, oh, there's an empty dot. There must be one more thing. And for what I do is I set a kitchen timer. You can use, because that was before iPhones, but if you have an iPhone or a Samsung, you can set a timer for 30 minutes. And you don't do anything else. The reason I don't do it on my computer is because I get distracted with emails and I think of something and I go, oh God, here's the text, and so all that is completely shut off. The door is closed. I have a thinking time chair, literally. The only time I sit in this chair is to think. So before I start a thinking time, I write down a question at the top of a page. I turn off all distractions. I settle into my chair. I get my body very still because my body's about to hate what's going to happen. So I kind of scratch what itches. I put my sweater on or take it off. I take a sip of water. All those have to get done. I clear my throat. I'm done with my body for the next 30 minutes. And all I'm going to do is write down answers to the questions. So I asked this very smart guy when he was telling me all this. I said, well, give me an example of a great question. And he said, well, here's a great question for a business owner. How would you have to run your business so customers would say, I'd have to be crazy to do business with someone else?
Mm. Wow.
I said, whew, man, that's a really good question. I said, do you have any more? And he said, huh, I've got hundreds. And now I do too. In fact, if you look at the Road Less Stupid, there's over 700 questions that are embedded into the book. Now, I don't want you to think the book is one long question, but at the end of every chapter is a little story. And at the end of every chapter, there's, 4 or 5 or 6 questions that would support you on a thinking time on that subject. I said, so do you have any more questions? And he said, yes. He said, here's the thinking time question. How big would my business be if I still had every customer who ever tried me?
Mm.
And what needs to happen so that my recidivism or the attrition is cut by 50%? So my experience, Karl, is that most businesses are not growing, not because they're not adding new customers. Most businesses are adding new customers because that's where business owners tend to spend the majority of their growth efforts is, well, how do I add new customers? What social media? What search engine optimization? What do I need to toot and tweet and twat and where's the what's the next where's the bigger bullhorn? What's the Facebook ad? And so they're adding customers, but most business owners suck at keeping the customers they got. No wonder they're not growing.
Yeah.
So a thinking time session is designed, and there's more to this in the book, but a thinking time session is designed to give you a lot of possibilities. Some of them are going to be horrible. Some of them are going to be outrageous. If you can't do it. I don't need a lot of good ideas. I need one. So at the end of every thinking time, I take 10 or 15 minutes, and I call my list of ideas and find the 1 or 2 that are the best idea. And those best ideas sometimes need a thinking time question. That idea may become a thinking time.
Yeah.
But what I find is I wind up with better ideas. I wind up with a wider range of ideas. I wind up with more clarity about my problem or my assumptions or what resources I need, what priorities need to shift, what initiatives we're going to commit to. I wind up with much greater traction as a result of doing thinking time. Now, I do thinking time 3 times a week. My thinking time sessions generally last 45 minutes, and I'm addicted. And the reason I'm addicted is because I like the way my life looks.
Love it. Okay, so can I jump in with a couple things?
Absolutely.
So for everybody reading, ironically, I got sponsored when I was 21 by the president of National Small Business Australia, and he had different but similar. But one of the biggest thing, he was just, taking time to think. He was just think, think, think. So the power of this for everybody listening is insane. I want you mentioned something important. I think don't use the laptop. Learn to think on paper. I think everybody should try and adopt that. Maybe you're the laptop or the iPad guy or gal, and that's fine. But learning to think on paper, I'm going to bet you'll pour gasoline on your sessions. Get a book to do what he's describing. It's time to think, like, get these questions, because you're going to go through it. You're going to lose the pad of paper, lose the napkin, and not be able to leverage it. But to cement the power of what you just described, I believe that you've said this, but if you lost everything today, tomorrow you would wake up and ask for one thing, and that would be thinking time. Am I correct there? And is that?
That's it. Take away everything I got. Take away all my skills and tools. Take away all my money and leave me only thinking time, and I'll get it back.
No. Guys, please listen to that. Okay, so if you take anything away, and like meditation and that sort of stuff, the power, I'm not sure what you think, Keith, but I find it to be a little bit like meditation, but the power is insane. So I hope that they all take that away.
I agree. I think I'm a big believer in meditation. I think there's a significant difference. Meditation is trying to clear my mind.
Yeah.
And thinking time is trying to get clarity.
Yeah. Okay.
And those, in my experience, are two different things.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Love it. Okay. So just a moment ago, you mentioned the obstacle versus the symptom in a roundabout way. How do you separate the obstacle or the problem from the symptom?
I'm going to ask you and whoever's listening to get back out your piece of paper or whatever you're taking notes, and I want you to write down one of your 3 biggest problems right now. Right? We're going to do it real time. You're not going to have to tell anybody. There's no sharing. We're not going to call on you. Just write down on your piece of paper one of your 3 biggest problems that you have right now. Okay, that's it. Stop writing. So literally, stop writing. The exercise is done. I think, without seeing your piece of paper, what every single one of you wrote down is not the problem. What you wrote down is the symptom. And I ask you to write down your problem. If you wrote down, I don't have enough revenue, that's a symptom, not a problem. If you wrote down, I don't have enough cash, that's a symptom, not a problem. If you wrote down, I'm 20 pounds overweight, that's a symptom, not a problem. I think what we do as humans, as business owners, is we spend the majority of our time solving the problem that isn't, because we haven't identified the problem. I mean, let's use an example. Suppose I wake up and I step on the bathroom scales and I go, oh man, I'm 10 pounds overweight. The very first, that's my problem. My problem is I'm 10 pounds overweight. So what am I going to do? Well, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to buy one of Oprah's 3,000 diet books that she's endorsed. I'm going to buy one of her books. And then I'm going to say, I tell you what I need to do. I need to join a gym. shoot, if I was just a member of a gym, and then I go, oh, I tell you what I should have. I should have a Peloton in my home, and that way I'd be sure and get my exercise in. And then I go, oh, well, I tell you what, I also want to take walks, so what I need is a new pair of tennis shoes. If I just had a new pair of tennis shoes, then I could lose some weight. If I just had, do you see the commonality of every one of those? Every one of those solutions is a tactic to solve the symptom of being 10 pounds overweight. 10 pounds overweight is the symptom of something else. And when I start with the symptom, then I have to become tactical. When people say I don't have enough sales, what's the first thing they do? Well, the first thing they do is, well, God, I got to rebuild my website. I need a social media strategy. I need some SEO. I need some Google ads. And all those may be true, but they're all tactical. What's the real problem? What's the real problem? That your revenues are not whether you want them to be. And that can be a fairly wide range of things, right? Mm-hmm. But if I ask the wrong question, I'm going to wind up with a whole suitcase of tactical answers. So consider this. How many diet books do most people that are 10 pounds chronically, most people that are chronically 10 pounds overweight, how many diet books do they have? One? No. They've got 50.
Yeah.
What's happened to all that home exercise equipment? I'll tell you where it is. It's in the attic. It ain't getting used because I was trying to solve the symptom, which is the problem that isn't and is not. Here it comes. That symptom is not the problem or the obstacle that's in the way. So here's the key. I have to figure out the obstacle that's in the way, that's blocking my forward progress. Marcus Aurelius said it. He was a very smart dude. Caesar back in the early Roman Empire. And what he said is, what stands in the way becomes the way. There's a book called The Obstacle in the Way. It's by a guy named Ryan Holiday. I highly recommend this book. If you stop and think about, here's what I want you to do. We'll try this, and it's going to get tricky, but I'm going to try to describe it. On your piece of paper, draw a horizontal line that's 6 inches long. And on that line, I want you to write is, I-S. That's point A. And starting with the far left-hand side of that horizontal line you just drew, I want you to draw a line that's 6 inches long that is at a 45-degree angle. So what we're creating is something that looks like a piece of pie, a pizza, a slice of pizza that's laying on its side. That's kind of what it looks like. We got a straight line, then we got a 45-degree angle line that's coming off the left-hand side and just juts up into the air. And on that top line, I want you to write ought. Ought. Is and ought. So What most people define as the problem is the gap between is and ought. That's what everybody just did. When I asked the question a second ago, write down on your piece of paper one of your three biggest problems. What everybody did is wrote down something that's in the gap. They go, well, here's where I am and here's where I'd like to be. And so the problem is that I'm not where I want to be. And the truth is that the gap between your is line and your ought line, point A and point B, point A is line, point B is your goal or your outcome or your standard or Oz, is point B. It's where you're trying to get. What I got to figure out is not just what's the gap between where I am and what I want. I got to figure out what's blocking my is line moving closer to what I want. So right at the intersection of those two lines, the horizontal line called is and the 45-degree angle line called ought, that's forming like something that looks like a piece of pizza pie on laying sideways. Right where those two lines intersect, I want you to take your pencil and I want you to create a solid circle on your piece of paper. So draw a circle right there between those two lines, right at the vortex, right at where they're meeting, and fill it in. And then draw an arrow pointing at that solid circle. Looks like a boulder, right? A boulder between those two lines. Draw an arrow, and I want you to write down the word obstacle. So that boulder in between where you are and where you want to be is the obstacle, not the gap. And if I can figure out what's the obstacle that's in my way, then the way to get to where I want is to start chipping away at that obstacle. I say this all the time. I say, look, ordinary things consistently done produce extraordinary results.
Yeah.
What can I do today to improve my situation? Those are things that begin chipping away at that boulder, that obstacle that's blocking my forward progress. And whatever that obstacle is, requires some thinking time because it's not obvious. If you ask me what's obvious, I go, I'm 10 pounds overweight and I don't exercise. Oh, I'm 10 pounds overweight. I don't have the right diet. Any of them will work. Every single copy of a diet book that someone has that's 10 pounds overweight, any of them will work. The problem is not a lack of a diet book. The problem is a lack of consistent execution.
Power of that is insane. May I jump in, Keith? Which I just did.
Yes, please.
For again, we get business coaches and consultants and digital consultants types that are listening. Guys, the same way that Keith just did that with you, okay? What did he do? He said, what are your three biggest problems? Write them down. You wrote them down, and immediately he followed up with confidence, because he's done this 10,000 times, if not more. He knew that you didn't write down the real problem. You wrote down the symptom, okay? So as he did it with that much confidence, and guess what? I'm sitting here doing the exercises with you. Guess what? I'm writing down the symptoms. So do that with your business owners, and then do the old pizza, the is and the ought, and then the big circle obstacle, which I'm staring at on my pad of paper. And what you're going to do is you're going to disrupt the business. Like you're right now, you're writing that down and you're probably a little bit disrupted going, damn, like he's right. And I'm concentrating on the symptom instead of the obstacle and chipping away at it. Do the same thing with a business owner. And guess what they're going to say? yeah, I need a little bit of help. It's going to be impossible for them to do anything other on the other end of it. So I really like that. I would guess that you'd agree with that, Keith. And would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100% agree. In fact, I'm really glad you injected there, because there's some people that will hear me and say, oh, well, he must not like diet books, or he doesn't believe in gyms, or he's against websites and digital marketing and SEO. And nothing could be further from the truth. I'm in favor of every one of those. But I have to make sure that I'm building a machine for the problem that is, for the obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't, you asked me when we started this, what's the number one thing that I would do if I walked into a business that was under $1 million?
Yeah.
And I told you about priorities and calendar and dashboards and etc. You could add this and make it the number one thing, because most business owners are destroying capital and calendar by prioritizing a machine for the problem that isn't.
Yeah.
The destruction of money and time is breathtaking, because I don't have, for the most part, and this is true for all businesses, for the most part, they don't have clarity on the obstacle that's in the way. And as Marcus Aurelius said so brilliantly, what's in the way is the way. That's how hard this is.
I love it. Okay. Well, that leads me into, so here, I know that one of your favorite questions, which I think this actually might be your screensaver. And the fact that I know that might tell a little, maybe I'm following you too much. But anyways, one of your favorite questions is, what don't I see? What would you say the number one thing that business owners, and again, let's assume under $1 million, if it's relevant, but what's the number one thing that they do not see, in your opinion?
The actual obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a problem. I think they don't see how their lack of yellow brick road is causing the hair on fire, whack-a-mole, pin the tail on the donkey, frantic heaving and throwing that happens in most smaller businesses. Most smaller businesses spend the majority of their time in a reactionary, dumpster fire, hair on fire kind of mode. Mm-hmm. And their most common complaint is, my God, I'm working so hard. I don't have time. Now, I'm going to clarify that. You do have time. You're just not a good steward of the time that's been allotted to you. And the reason you're not a good steward is because you haven't done a good job planning. You haven't done a good job prioritizing. You haven't done a good job of adding A players to your team, which now gives you leverage to be able to do more. So instead, you're providing the service, you're doing the bookkeeping, you're answering the telephone, you're trying to create blog posts or something to help drive new business, you're dealing with complaints, the billing isn't going out on time, customers are not paying on time because you haven't done a good job of following up or setting expectations. That's a whole different subject. And so as a result, you go, I don't have any more time. I'm out. I don't know what to do. Well, the problem is there's a lack of structure and there's a lack of leverage.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of clarity on the problem that really is. The symptom is I don't have enough time. That's not the problem. That's the symptom. People say, my biggest problem is I have a crappy relationship. That's a symptom. What's the problem?
Yeah.
So I think that not getting clarity over the obstacle, I think not getting clarity on priorities, I think executing on ideas and not plans, all of those are part of what don't I see? What's the structure I need? What's the leverage I need in order to do 25% more?
Yeah.
If I was going to increase revenue by 25%, what are the 5 most important things that I need to prioritize and measure and manage? And how do I make sure that my calendar is aligned with my priorities? What's the plan that I have developed that prevents me from being reactionary and allows me to be thoughtful and proactive?
Got it. I love it. So, okay. So speaking of things that people don't see, expenses, like we talked about margin, the importance, like what expenses are easiest, and again, assuming we're walking into a business owner, they're the chiropractor, butcher, baker, candlestick maker, trying to get to $1 million. What expenses are easiest to reduce or eliminate that would lead to higher profitability?
The single greatest expense that most businesses incur is the loss of customers.
Mm.
And it won't show up on an income statement. It won't show up on a balance sheet. But by far, that is the single greatest expense. I'll tell you a little story. Years and years ago, I was sitting in my office and my accounting team delivered the monthly financials on one of the businesses that I owned. Keep in mind, I don't operate the business, I run it. I'm not at the business, I'm at my office that isn't at the business, but I'm running the business.
Yeah.
So I get the financial statements and I start looking through it, and there's an expense item, and I go, oh my God, what happened here? So I got on the phone and got my general manager, CEO, on the phone, and I asked her, "What have you seen this month's financials?" And she said, yes. And I said, have you seen this particular line item? And she said, yes. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, oh, that was just a cost of doing business. I said, you got to be kidding me. We have cost of doing business? And she said, yes, every business has cost of doing business. I said, I don't. I have no cost in my business. I have no expenses in my business, none. She said, you got to be kidding me. She said, look at the financial statement. It's filled with expenses. I said, no. My accountants call those expenses. I call those investments.
Oh.
And she said, I don't understand. I said, there's only 2 reasons to spend money. Only 2. I don't care what business you're in. There's only 2 reasons to spend money, and both of them are an investment. Number 1, I'm going to invest to keep the customers I got. And number 2, I'm going to invest in getting new customers. Now, here's what's interesting about that. if it's an expense, my brain struggles with, well, how much is too much? Well, is this the right number? If it's an investment, I can measure the return. Investments get returns. All investments get returns. When you invest in the stock market, you have an expectation of a certain return. When you invest in when you started your business, you had an expectation of a certain return. All right, I'm going to make the investment, I'm going to write the check, and in return, I get some kind of yield. So I'm able to measure how's the investment that I'm making at keeping the customers I got. I can measure that. And how's the investment that I'm making allowing me to get new customers? And I can measure that. And anything that I spend money on that doesn't support me keeping the customers I got or getting new ones is a candidate to get eliminated. I don't know why else you would spend money. So if you reframe your expenses so that they're no longer a cost of doing business, they're no longer called an expense because that's what accountants call them, but you're an owner. And as an owner, maybe if you reframed it so it wasn't a cost or an expense, and instead it was an investment in keeping what I got or getting new.
Love it.
And I found over the last 35, 40 years since I first had that realization, I found that that's probably one of the most powerful financial insights that I learned and that I use. I think there's a second. By the way, keeping customers is doing something people will notice. Getting new customers is getting people to notice what you do. Those are two very different activities. Doing something people will notice is called keeping customers. Getting new customers is getting people to notice what you do.
Yeah.
I think losing customers is largely a result. So stay with me for a minute on this. Losing customers is largely a result of unmet expectations. The reason customers leave, so you worked your butt off to get all these new customers. You spent a ton of money to get all these new customers. You got a website, you got SEO, you did all the things. You got all these new customers, and then you don't keep them. Well, that's insane. And I think the reason that we wind up losing customers is because they have an expectation that we haven't met. Now, this is thorny, this road I'm going to go down, because sometimes their expectations are something that we marketed in order to get them to try us, and it was unrealistic, and nobody could deliver on that expectation. But you planted that in their head, so they have a certain expectation. Sometimes the unmet expectation is because there was an uncommunicated hurdle or expectation that we wanted to communicate to them, but we didn't. We didn't do a good job of saying, hey, if you come here, here's what you expect. Now, I'm going to use an example. When you go to McDonald's, you're not disappointed that the food is horrible. You're not disappointed that it's wrapped up in plastic that's been sitting under a a hot lamp. Their French fries are spectacular, but the rest of their food is crappy. It, it, you're not disappointed that you get your condiments in a little package that you have to use your teeth to open. They've set your expectations. Come to McDonald's, you get truly crappy food, very, very fast and very cheap. But if you went to your favorite restaurant, which is not McDonald's for anybody over the age of 10, if you went to your favorite restaurant, you'd be incredibly disappointed that you're unwrapping a 2-hour-old soggy cheeseburger with a hot fry that if you try to eat it as soon as it's given to you, you sear the skin off the roof of your mouth. You'd be incredibly disappointed because they've set your expectations to a different standard. Now I'm going to give you another example. Southwest Airlines. Nobody is disappointed when they get on Southwest Airlines that there isn't first class or there isn't food. Nobody is disappointed because Southwest Airlines has set your expectations. When you fly with us, you're not going to get food. You're not going to get first class. You're not going to get an assigned seat. But we do tend to be on time. When you go to Home Depot, you're not disappointed when you're in Home Depot that you can't find a dude in an orange apron. They have no employees inside the store, including at the checkout. You check out by yourself. There's nobody that can help you. And I'm kind of not the best with home improvement projects, but when I go to Home Depot, sometimes they've got 57 aisles, and I don't know where to find what I need. I'd like one person in one orange apron one time to come up and say, "You look lost. How can I help you?" Now, I think Home Depot's motto should be, "You can do it yourself, but we can't help you." When I go to my corner hardware store to buy whatever I need, which is where I like to go, I walk in and there's an old guy. I'm old. This guy is old. He's old. And he kind of comes teetering over to me. He's got a cane. He says, "How can I help you, Sonny?" And I say, "Well, I need this, this, and this." And he says, "Follow me." And so I follow him around, and he troops me around, and I'm in and out of there in 5 minutes. I've spent twice as much as I would at Home Depot. The prices at my corner hardware store are double Home Depot. But the corner hardware store has set my expectation. You come to us, you're going to pay more, we're going to help you. Home Depot has set my expectation. You come to us, we're going to pay. You're going to pay less. We're not going to help you, and you're going to be in the store forever, searching for the thing that you want. Nordstrom's has set your expectation. High levels of service. Apple has set your expectation. Very cool, clean, technologically advanced, innovative stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think the expense, and I'm circling back now, I think the expense that is not showing up, but it's really the one that's heavy, is we do a relatively poor job of setting expectations or hitting the expectations we've set.
Mm.
And if we would do a better job of communicating expectations and then designing our business model so that we deliver on the expectations we've set or they have assumed, then we wind up losing fewer customers and we make more money.
I love it. I got to tell you, that's not the answer I was expecting. The investment, right? It's like, or the, you know what I mean? I thought we were going to start talking about staff and whatnot. Very cool.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.